Welcome to DataSnap Simple Calculator Service Skill Sprint. My name is Pawel Glowacki. I'm working for Embarcadero as EMEA Technical Lead for DevTools. The objective of this skill sprint is to spend 20 minutes just learning one topic in a very good way. So for me, the topic will be building DataSnap application with Delphi XE6 that is part of RadStudio XE6. I'm going to first start with building a simple server, DataSnap server, that is going to provide a simple calculator service functionality, and then I'm going to build a mobile FireMonkey client using Object Pascal language, and I'm going to create one client application that can be recompiled to both iOS and Android. So in a matter of 20 minutes we are going to see how it's easy to build multi-tier DataSnap applications with RadStudio XE6. And the objective is to learn how to use wizards and to know the best practices. So DataSnap is a very rich technology. You have a choice of different server architectures, different protocols, so we are going to focus on some of the best practices. So in RadStudio XE6, for performance reasons, it's recommended that you implement your DataSnap server as a web server application as opposite to a standalone server. For communication protocol, we are going to use HTTP, which is much better as compared to TCP/IP, especially in the context of mobile, frequently disconnected applications. And we are going also to use REST architecture, and we are not going to use the obsolete DBX architecture. So let me switch to Delphi and to RadStudio. I'm going to start with creating a simple DataSnap server. So file other, and in the DataSnap server category I'm going to go for this DataSnap REST application. So this is a server that is going to be I'm going to build it for demonstration purposes as a standalone web application wizard. So we are going to have a executable that will be both the web server and also included web server application. So if you want to deploy to DLL as a DLL to IIS or as an Apache dynamic link module, you can reuse this work and just add to the same project group these other two types of projects and share the application file, so you have different targets at the same time. Okay, I'm going to go for a standalone application. I'm going to select for the FireMonkey as the form for the test web server. I'm going to test the connectivity on the port 880, it's okay, and I'm going in the next section. I'm going to just stick with a default choices for server features. So this is supposed to be relatively easy, so you can get started. In other skill sprints you can see how to work with authentication, authorization, how to use HTTPS, but I want to keep this simple, so just to go to walk you through the basic steps of building clients and server application. When I click on next, I have just one last option to as base class for my server methods module. So this can be a plain T component, and if you plan to use some server-side components, non-visual, it's good to choose data module, so you have a place to drop your non-visual server-side components, for example database access components. Okay, now I need to specify the name of this project. So this is important that you put any spaces here, because the name of the if I need to go to the apps, here I go for my apps, click on OK, and now I need to specify the folder. So this will be my simple calculator server. Okay, so this is also going to be the name of my server executable, so this last folder cannot contain spaces. Okay, so the wizard generates for me everything that I need to have for a simple calculator server. I can just save this file, so I'm going to keep the default form unit 1, server methods unit 1, web module unit 1, and I'm going to change the caption on the form to a simple calculator service Delphi x6. Okay, so that's my server form. So currently the wizard has generated for me this form that you can use it to start the web server. We have now a self-contained application with a web server. This is a test in the web server, and our DataSnap application is implemented here as well. So the functionality that is offered to the clients is defined in the server methods module. Actually, I need to get rid of this unit because it's not necessary. That was something that was changed in the update 1 for x6, so you need to get rid of this unit. It is added here erroneously. So the functionality that server methods provides is all the public and published methods defined here. So you just define your server methods as just a regular methods here, and DataSnap will take care to make it available to the clients. So in order to develop the client, the only requirement is that the server is running, so the client can connect to it at design time, and from running server it can read the metadata about the functionality that the server provides. So I'm going to, for the moment, I'm going to keep this functionality as is, because later I want to show you how you can actually update the client-side code after it was generated for the first time. So this is my functionality. I'm going to first use this reverse string, so the client will be able to send over the network the string value to be reversed, and the server will send a reversed string. So this functionality is implemented in this line of code. There are also other units that makes up the server. So specifically there's a web module unit, there is a DS server component that acts as a heart of the server, the DS server class that represents our server methods unit. This class has a DS server property, and also it has an event on get class. So this event, in this event we specify the type of the server method class that needs to be exposed to the clients. In generic case there could be more than one server class in the server, and very important is the life cycle of the server class. So this could be a session, a server, or invocation. In case of the session, there is a one server methods unit, server methods 1 class instantiated for every connected client. So this is there is isolation between the different server side classes that works with clients. For invocation, the server method class will be instantiated only for the duration of the method call, and the last value server means that there is one global instance of the server methods 1 class that can be used with all connected clients. So in this case you have to be it has to be written in a thread safe way. Okay, so my server is running. I can now just go ahead and run it, because it needs to be running in order so I can develop a client for it. Click on start. Actually this is very handy because the REST application, or DataSnap REST application, also comes with the JavaScript client. So if I open the browser here, I can see the test client in my reverse string functionality can be tried inside of the browser. So there is something called a JavaScript proxy generator. So the code to access this server-side functionality has been generated, and this is a web website, an HTML client that use JavaScript to invoke the reverse string method in this case, or I can go to the list of all the server functions. So in the tserver methods unit we have this reverse string. I can use this to test it. For example, hello, click on execute, and then bottom part of the screen I can see my hello has been reversed. So it seems that my server works okay. So now I can go back and create a client for my server. So to the project group I'm going to add a new project. So this is going to be a Delphi FireMonkey mobile application. So I'm going to select a blank application for it. I'm going to save it maybe in the same location as my other one. So maybe I'm going to create a folder, simple calculator client. Okay, and here we are going to have our form client unit 1, and for the project simple calculator client. Okay, so my project group will be just a simple calculator group. Okay, save. So now I have a project group, so I have a server and I have a client. So my client can be compiled as an Android application, iOS device, or an iOS simulator. So to keep it simple, I'm going to also add another platform, Win32 platform, so I can compile my DataSnap client as a Windows application, so that will be enough for testing. But if you want to create an Android version of it or iOS device, you just need to select a different target platform and click on run, and it will compile and deploy to your device of choice. So I'm going to stick with the 32 bits functionality. Okay, so in order to be able to call this remote server functionality, I need to use a wizard. I need to add to the client application, to the client project, 2 units. These 2 units will be generated from the wizard, and it is important that you select DataSnap REST client module and not DataSnap client module. You can see there is a DBX, but we want to go for the REST. So this is recommended architecture and is much better suited for mobile clients. Click on OK. So there will be a number of questions. Where is my server running? So in general it's a remote server. I know it's a web broker standalone server application, but it's not so important here. I can specify the host name, so it's running on the same machine, but in reality that will be an IP address of my server. Test connection succeeded. Okay, click on finish, and here we have a DS REST connection. So this is a component that has all the information about the location of our server, its port number, its host number, and this is inside of the data module called client module unit 1. So this is the module that I'm going to save it. So this is the module that has been generated, and this is the module that I need to use in my client form. So this module has a REST connection, but also it has a property called server methods 1 client of type tserver methods 1 client. So this is this class has been generated in the second unit by the wizard. You can see DataSnap proxy generator, and this class has the same name as my server methods class with the client appended, and it has the same functionality as the server. So basically what happened is that my server is running, so the wizard has queried the server for its functionality, and it has generated the code to call a remote method. So the process is that you instantiate the server methods class on the client, and you just call its methods. So in this way, these methods basically, these calls are translated to remote calls to the remote server, and then results are returned from the server and returned from these methods. In this way, it's super easy to call remote server methods. So how do I instantiate this unit? Oh, it's relatively simple. You can see I can inside of my client module unit, I have this property server methods one client. So this is a property with a getter. So when the anybody is accessing this this property, this function is triggered. So if the server methods client is nil, then it is created, and it needs to get as a part of the as a parameter to constructor a DS REST connection, so it can connect to the server. So in this way, we can just very easily add code, use unit form client. Actually, we need to go to the form client unit, and here we need to add to the users clause this client module unit, so we can access a server-side functionality. So here I'm going to add a T-button component, and I'm going to add a T-edit component, like this. So I'm going to put here in the name of the text of the button reverse, and inside of the edit will be text to reverse. Okay, so now I can just write the following code. I am going to display in the edit the contents of the edit reverse. So I'm going to do a client module 1, this property server methods one client, and it has all the functionality needed like reverse string, and I'm going to pass an edit.text. Okay, so now if I just run this application as a Windows application, I can see that I can call a remote application. So notice that my server is running, it's a separate application. In a real world, this application would be running on a server somewhere in the internet, and I would need to know its IP address or the host name. Also, the client here for demo purposes is compiled as a Win32 application, but this can be compiled as an Android or iOS device, so it can be running on iOS or Android device and access the functionality somewhere in the cloud. Okay, so let's do the next step. So I have already generated this client classes unit. So what happens if I change or add or delete functionality on the server? How do I get this functionality updated? So let's add our server method. So I need to stop the server, so this could be tricky. Here yes, here is my server running. Okay, so server and client are now stopped. So I go to my server methods unit, and I'm going to implement some more functionality like function add that will take 2 integer values and will return an integer value, and function subtract that will also take these 2 values A and B and will return the result. Okay, click on Ctrl+Shift+C, and I need to provide implementation of these methods. It's very difficult, but we know it's not that difficult. One is result A plus B, and in the second case the result is A minus B. Okay, so this is our simple calculator service. It does not do much, but now I need to run it again, so the new metadata will be available for the client. And inside of the client, I don't need to go through the wizard again. What I can do is I can just click on REST connection and generate DataSnap client classes. So this will update the client classes. So now I see there is new functionality, add and subtract. Actually there is T missing, but I'm not going to change it. Actually I can, but maybe in the next example. But you have these two new function, and now I can just extend my user interface. So in my form client unit I can just add two additional edits. Edit 1, that will be for letter A, and there will be another T edit B. So that will be, I'm going to name this edit A, and this edit B. So to keep it simple, I'm already going to add some values here, so maybe 2 here, and in edit I will be 5. Okay, so now I'm going to provide 2 buttons, one for adding and one for subtracting. Okay, so there will be button add and button subtract. Okay, so I'm going to make the text proper, so be minus sign and the plus sign. Okay, so if now I can just display the result in the message box. So I can take result, maybe I just make a variable C for the result, maybe A, B, C. So this is my value. So A is an edit 1 text 2 integer. I don't do any type checking, but I want to do it. No, it's edit A, and B will be the same. Okay, B, edit B, and now I can calculate the C equals my client module 1 server methods client and add, and I'm going to pass A and B, and I can display the message A to string plus B to string. Notice that I can use those handy helpers here, equals C to string. So that should do. Okay, I'm missing one plus sign here and 2 plus signs here, so that's correct. And I'm going to do the same thing for subtract. I'm going to copy some of the code from here, so I have less typing. So this will be subtract, and it's going to be minus sign. Okay, so now my application should be ready. I'm going to run it. If I click on plus, I should see that 5 plus 2 equals 7. If I click on minus, it gives me 5 minus 2, 3. Okay, so in this developer skill sprint, I have demonstrated some of the best practices in building DataSnap XE6 application. So we have used DataSnap server wizard and implemented our server as a web server application. We have used HTTP communication protocol for communication between client and server, and we have used REST architecture for communicating with the server. So this is really very simple technology. So the power of rapid application development based on reusable components shines with complex technologies like DataSnap. So it is probably the most productive environment for building multi-tier apps fast. There are more topic resources here. There are samples. You can find DataSnap samples in the installation directory of RadStudio XE6. There are also blogs, and also this you can also find Delphi Labs. So this is a collection of DataSnap tutorials that I have created originally for XE and updated to XE3. But this skill sprint is the new generation of the lab number 1, and it's not using DBX, and it's not using TCP/IP, it's not using standalone servers, it's using the new recommended technologies in RadStudio XE6. Thank you very much for watching this DataSnap skill sprint.
When client is the program that generates the data running on local computer, would still TCP/IP be the best protocol?
I believe that in this presentation I actually made clear that the preferred way to actually build multi-tier systems is with HTTP or HTTPS protocol. There are certain benefits, like it is stateless, so especially when you have a mobile client with access to internet that can be actually problematic or terminated from time to time, the DS REST connection component does not even have a property active, so every single HTTP call is independent, so it's more reliable. So I would say that in any case it is recommended to use the HTTP over the TCP/IP.
Okay. Where should the server be deployed on a remote web server?
Yeah, so actually in the demo that I have demonstrated, both server and client were running inside of the same Windows machine, but in reality you would deploy the server application on some server machine or just any machine in the internet. So one typical use case, what I'm doing is to deploy to machines in the cloud, for example, in the Amazon Web Services cloud. So this could be just any machine with the Windows operating system, and then you have a choice of either deploying this like the standalone executable based on the Indie server technology. That was the one that was demonstrated, but you will get more performance if you compile your application as ISAPI DLL and deploy it into the Internet Information Server. So this is probably the most preferred scenario in production, to compile the project as an IIS DLL and deploy it to the IIS server that could be running very much anywhere.
Okay. You mentioned that DBX is obsolete. What does that mean for the average developer?
I think it's a matter of really of choice. Actually, these components are just not preferred. It's not the case that they are not working. So going forward, we look more and more into the mobile scenarios. So at the time when initially when the DataSnap was recreated back in Delphi 2009, I believe, that the DBX connection, it was actually originally implemented as an extension to the DB Express framework, and initially there was only a TCP/IP component. Over time, those components were evolving, and the HTTP support were added, and in the subsequent releases the new REST connection component was added. So for the average developer is that if you have an existing system that is working for you, there is nothing wrong with it. But if you are thinking about building a new system and you need to take some architectural decisions, it's probably better to start off with the HTTP and REST instead of TCP/IP and DBX.
Is it possible to update the methods in the automatic generated unit later if new ones are implemented on the server, or must they be updated by hand, storing functionality?
No, actually this was one of the key skills that I wanted to demonstrate here is that you basically right-click on a REST connection component and you can regenerate the proxy code. So you don't have to do it manually. So the process is that basically the proxy wizard, the only requirement is that the server is running. So if you want to change the functionality on the server, you just stop the server, you re-implement your server, so you can add functionality, you can change functionality, you can remove some functionality, you make sure that you start the server again, and then either the wizard, or you can, if you have it already generated, the client classes, you can just recreate them just by using the context menu on the REST connection component, and anytime you can be in sync.
When you're looking for someone to host your DataSnap server, like as far as like an ISP, etc., what should you be looking for to find out if it'll be compatible or if they'll be able to host it for you?
There is hardly any requirement. The only requirement is this is a Windows machine. So you need to have a look into whether it's a 32-bit or 64-bit architecture, so you can compile your server accordingly. Otherwise, there is no specific requirements. It's just this machine needs to be visible to the external world. So maybe you need to make sure that at least the port 80, or depending on which port you are using, is open in the firewall. And otherwise, there are no specific limitations. So just any Windows machine will do.
Okay. Can you explain the differences between invocation and session options for DataSnap server again, please?
Okay, so that's basically on a server class component. There is a life cycle. Actually, on the screen right now, you can see the screenshot from a Delphi Labs. There is a dedicated lab that discussed this in depth. So basically, it is about the instantiation model of the server methods instances. So when you deploy your application, there could be a situation that there are multiple clients connecting to it simultaneously. So in the DataSnap model, the developer does not need to worry about instantiating the server methods instances inside of the server. So this is handled by the DataSnap architecture. So if there are three possible options here, the default option is the session, which means that for the moment the client connects to the server, inside of the server process there is a dedicated instance of the server methods class instantiated just for this particular client, and the moment it disconnects, this instance is actually destroyed. There are also options for invocation, which means that the life cycle of the server methods instance is only limited to the duration of the call. So just after the call arrives to the server methods instance is created, the call is handled, and after it returns, the instance is destroyed. This is probably the most scalable option because the server instances does not stay in the server memory. And the last option is the server, which is where you have one global instance for all connected clients. So that's, you need to carefully implement it because you need to make sure that your code is thread safe, because you can receive calls to your server methods from multiple threads.
So Alf's saying that when a client connects to the DataSnap server using a session, the data module is kept in memory for about 20 minutes before being destroyed. Can that time be changed to conserve memory usage or otherwise modified?
I don't believe that there is a special setting that controls this. This is something that is internal to the DataSnap architecture, and I don't think it's possible to control it. So yeah, I don't think you can really, or I'm not aware of a way to control this, other than changing the lifecycle property of the server class component.
If we want to have a keep alive connection for certain transactions, how do you do that?
That's a good question. So you need to think. Maybe also you should keep in mind that basically your the server application is the content inside of the server application is not only the server methods that instances that are actually controlled by the DataSnap itself, but you as a programmer, you are free to actually create inside of the server your own classes. So one strategy would be to actually have a data module, for example, that can live longer, and you as a programmer, you can control the lifetime of this separate class that could, for example, handle transactions. So this is especially important in case of the HTTP, which is a stateless protocol. So this could be, so you need to carefully design it, or otherwise you can actually have a server setting in the life cycle for your server class. So in this way, you know that this instance will exist throughout the lifetime of your server application. So you know that you can do something, maintain certain state, like state of the transaction between the calls to your server methods.
Should I use a post update the server and database and not use the client dataset?
Actually, we don't really recommend using client datasets anymore. The more, since the introduction of the FireDuck, it's much more efficient to use mem table, the FireDuck mem table. So actually, next week on Wednesday, there is a webinar that I'm going to deliver that discusses the better way of creating a really multi-tier application that was available back a few years ago. So now we have a FireDuck JSON reflection framework. So basically you have a better control on the process of updating and working with data that you used to have with the old IApp server interface-based model that was introduced back, I believe, in Delphi 3 and stood the test of time. But the thing is that you didn't have so much programmatic control of the methods that were actually server methods that were invoked under the hood. So with this new FireDuck JSON reflection model, you can programmatically control every single server method call. So in this way, you can control how your data is updated, how it's read, and etc.
Okay, where would you find examples of deploying to IIS?
Examples of the deploying to IIS. I'm not sure. Typically, for the demo purposes, it's a typical way of actually building this as a standalone application, because if you want to stop the application, then you have to typically unload your DLL from the memory of the IIS, and this is kind of cumbersome. So a typical, it's very easy to create one. You just create in a wizard. When you create a new DataSnap server, you just need to select a DLL, ISAPI DLL, or in x6 you have also an option to select an Apache, and then basically the process is exactly the same, but the resulting executable is not exe, but it's a DLL that you can deploy. Another interesting technique to work with a DLLs and be able to get the benefits of easy debugging and development of the standalone application is to have to create two projects in one group. So you can create your application as ISAPI DLL, and then you can add to the project group another DataSnap server, but created as an executable, and you make sure that both projects are using the same files. So during the testing, you can use your exe project, so you know that how it works. But the moment that you want to deploy it to the production, you just change active project in the project group, and you can just compile the very same application as a DLL. So that's probably the best practice, maybe something that it would be worth documenting.
Is there a preference between IIS and Apache?
I don't think there is a preference. There are different web servers on the market, so IIS is limited to Windows. Currently, we support Apache on Windows only, but maybe given the fact that RapidStudio XE6 supports more than Windows, we may support also Linux on Apache on other platforms. So these are just two different projects, and it's two different web server types. It's really up to the developer to decide which one he wants. Probably the IIS administrator console is kind of complex, and it takes time to be successful with deploying and working. Apache is slightly easier in deployment. So, but it's really two different products. It's really up to the developer to decide what is better for him.
How do you tell how many clients are connected to DataSnap server?
You can do it in different ways. So there is no out-of-the-box functionality that you tell it, but you can, for example, implement a class variable on your server methods class, and every time that you're you can, for example, increment this variable every time that your method is your server methods class is instantiated, and decrease this variable every time is destroyed. There are also relevant events on the I believe on the server class that on create and on destroy. I don't have this in front of me, but there are events that you can use to, for example, to maintain a counter of your server methods class. So there is an event when the client connects, and there is an event when the client disconnects. So you can use this to actually maintain the count of the existing server methods.
Okay. My server doesn't need to be online all the time, and I'm using a REST connection. My question is, can I host the server on my machine? I guess it means on the desktop.
Yeah, so the server, in order to be able to handle your request, it needs to be running. So you basically, the idea behind the things like web server is that the ISAPI DLL or Apache DLL is loaded to memory of the web server when there is a first request to this particular web application. So this is but the web server itself has to be running. So I don't think there is a way to actually be able to, for this to work if the server is not running. So you must have some way of activation or starting your server process before it can handle any request from clients.
Can the server and the client exist in the same executable? So I'm guessing kind of a peer-to-peer situation?
I think it could. That's a possibility. What I've been playing with in the past, I was creating, for example, a SOAP server and a DataSnap server in the same executable, and they were coexisting. And yeah, it depends what kind of functionality you are looking for, but in principle, it should be possible. So you have two identical executables that can act as either server on a client or a client.
Okay, getting lots of questions here. If I host my REST server app on my machine, a standalone server, can my client app, not on the same machine, connect to the server? Or
yes,
on
of course.
a different network? Yeah, sorry.
This is a typical scenario. So this the one reason why the technologies like DataSnap or web services exist is to be able to, for one application running on one physical machine, to be able to request or call the functionality of the application running on a different machine. So yeah, that's the case. That's a typical case. This is the situation when both server and client are running on the same machine is kind of a non-typical, but great for demos.
Okay. When running applications on a mobile device, so when the client is on a mobile device, where is the data stored?
Yeah, this is actually, it really depends on the architecture. So it doesn't, in the example that I gave during the presentation, the client was a mobile client and the server was a desktop application. So this is the most typical case. So it's really up to the developer to decide what he's doing with the data that can be exchanged between the server and the client. So in most cases, the most typical scenario would be to have a standalone database with data that is, and the server basically acts as sits in between the mobile client and the database and just serves the data. But then when data arrives to the client, and then it's really up to what you want to do with this data. Maybe you just want to display this data and you don't need to persist it. Maybe you can use the FD memory table component or a client dataset component to work with data in memory, and this data can be saved to the local file. Or maybe you can use an embedded database on your mobile devices, like, for example, IB Lite that we provide, and then you can keep this data locally on the device. So it's really up to the developer to make these decisions.
So we're running out of time here, so I'll try and get through the rest of these. How do you what are some tips for making your application more scalable and handling redundancy, your server side?
My tips would be to really look for deployment platforms like, for example, Amazon Web Services, where you can have an auto-scaling groups and health checks. So in this way, depending on the load of on your application, the infrastructure can actually start more instances of your server machine. So this is all virtualized. So regardless of how many clients can actually try to invoke your application, then there will be more physical virtual machines running in the cloud. So in this case, it's important to really use stateless protocols like HTTP. So you try to avoid storing state inside of your server. So in this way, it doesn't really matter if subsequent HTTP requests from your application will be handled by this or other server. In this way, you can achieve scalability and performance, and you know there is no single point of failure.
Okay, what's the difference between DataSnap server and client always connected and a DataSnap server and client connect whenever needed?
I think that the thing is related to the protocols that we are using. So in the world of TCP/IP, you open the connection is open, and some moment you close the connection. But if you lose connection to internet, then basically you can lose your connection to the server. In the context of the stateless protocols like HTTP, there is no concept of client being connected to the server. Every HTTP request is independent from any other HTTP request, and that's a good thing for a scalable multi-tier system.
There was a question here from Ilya. Is it possible to use data sets? And you're going to cover that next Wednesday, right?
Yeah, so actually this was the easy example, and the objective was to give you an understanding of the steps to create a server, create a client, add some custom functionality. And in this example, we were passing as parameters just strings and integers, but you can also pass more complex data types. So you can pass data sets, you can pass JSON, and this is used for exchanging data sets. So the next Wednesday on August 20, there will be my webinar on building multi-tier database applications. So it is possible, and I'm going to demonstrate it next week. So feel free to register. The link is on the edn.embarcadero.com website, so you can find this link there very easily. Then registration page. Oh, that's it.
Yeah, the registration page is wherever I put it there. And if you go to EDN, then there's the link and banner bitmap right down there. Okay. All right. Difference between DBX and REST with DataSnap? Pawel, Richard's saying maybe he missed it in the webinar somewhere.
So basically there are two different frameworks in the DataSnap that you can build, that you can use for building DataSnap systems. So historically, DBX, the DataSnap has been initially introduced, and it was called Midas back in, I believe, Delphi 3. And it was based on a different set of technologies, but in Delphi 2009, the DataSnap support has been actually rewritten in pure Delphi and based on a DB Express architecture. And initially, the only feature and the only possible way was to use TCP/IP protocol. So that's the name DBX as a framework, because this was an extension to the DB Express. So the DataSnap connectivity was implemented as a kind of a special DB Express driver that, from the perspective of the client application, looked very much like a database, and the functionality that the server provided looked very much like the stored procedures that you can pass parameters to and get some parameters back. So that's if you look into the DataSnap wizards, when you create a DataSnap standalone application, you effectively create this old-style DBX application, and there is also a corresponding client to it with a DBX, and basically what this client does, instead of adding this TDS REST connection component that I have added, you can see that it's adding a regular DB Express T-SQL connection with a DataSnap driver. So these are the two different frameworks. So the newer one, actually the one that we recommend to use, is the REST framework. So there is a different wizard to create the application. So you actually you can create an application as a web application, and then to consume this, there is a different client. So instead of creating a DBX client module, you have a REST client module. So in a DBX framework, you have a choice of either using TCP/IP or HTTP protocol. In the REST framework, this is only HTTP because that's the web protocol, so you cannot really access the web application in a different way. So these are two different frameworks within the product, but we recommend that you look into using web-based protocols, and specifically the REST one. So that was demonstrated in this skill sprint.